Yeah, so this talk is kind of special for me because I got invited by my friend, who we knew, and then often I don't get a chance to talk about, let's say, presentation, right? We often get some chance to talk about our own concepts, but not exactly how to give presentation. Every talk I give, usually, or in general, like I switch to learn more because there is always something to learn. Learning in the sense of like I give a talk, how to give this talk in the best optimal way. And fortunately, the talk is about that way, right? So both kind of interests coincide. Um, Also with the talk, we have this nice view. So we at least outperforming all of them in terms of view, right? So let's set the same expectation with the talk too. So I will start with a story before going into all the details of presentation. And the story sort of should motivate us why we are here, why we want to be a good presenter of our own work, right? So what is the story? How many of you have read this book, Outliers? Okay, so the story is not about the book. The book is about something else. So the book is about how people become successful, right? And you can guess probably from the name. And then the story of the book is that if someone is successful, just not because of their own talent, because they were at the right time, at the right setting, with the right skills, right? So there are many examples in the book, and then if you read the book, you'll be fascinated. But the book was motivated by a story, and I'm going to tell you that story. So that story is about a small village in Pennsylvania. So the village is called Roseto, and in the village there were mostly Italian immigrants, right? Who immigrated from Italy and kind of set up there. So what happened there? So basically, the story is in 1860s, if I'm not wrong, and people found that there were, let's say, lesser rate of heart disease in that particular village. And who found that? His name is Dr. Wolf, who was working in University of Oklahoma. Right? So, and then he became very interested of what's the reason why people's heart disease rate is so low in that particular place, right? So he tried to find out what happened there. So one, kind of obvious clue is maybe food, right? Maybe they eat probably healthy food. But you know Italians, right? They eat like cheese, they drink wine, so all these factors kind of count in. So the culprit was not the food, right? Because they also do usual Italian people. So what is the second one? Second one, you might think, maybe they had a really good habit, right? So they go to maybe work out every day, they had lots of gyms, but come on, it's just a small village, right? So there would be no gym, but the village was near a mountain. So then you might think, maybe they go to mountain top and they come back every day, so maybe that's the reason, that's why they're so healthy, right? But then there were other villages nearby that village who has the same setup of this mountain, but they didn't have this low heart disease. Then Dr. Wolf's conclusion was really fascinating, that people there were very cohesive. That means they were community-wise connected. So they used to talk when they will see them. They will be sitting in each other's garden. They will have tea. So they had like more community sense. Of course, this is not medically validated that, because of the community sense, you get lower heart disease, but that's sort of his conclusion was from that particular scenario. So my sort of work in general research is on graphs, basically networks. So that research here I'm just translating because I want to say that we all together can become a better presenter, because this particular talk will probably have some discussion where I can learn from you and you can learn some facts from here, right? Okay, so we are going to do it together. So now we are going to talk. So first half, we'll do introduction, like why we need to give good talks. Second is what we need for the talks, right? So one point is we have to know our audience. Second is we have to structure our talk in a way so that it becomes easier to understand. And then I will talk about slide design. So this is the first half, then I will break down the second half later on. Okay, so why skills matter? So before even we go there, just we can make it as a conversation, right? We don't need to kind of be, like you don't need to be a listener, I don't need to be a speaker. We can both speak and try to help each other, okay? So one thing is why presentation skill matter, because everywhere we go, we need to give some sort of presentation, right? So let's say if you consider our work field, so I work in computer science in AI, so I need to present my research, right? So I have an audience, I need to show them how cool this research is, how it is going to benefit the society, right? So I have to convince someone. So science basically is about convincing others that it must be useful, right? When you are a news reporter, right? You are presenting something, you are presenting news in a way so that people can understand quickly. So all of our work in some way sort of associate with some sort of presentation, right? And we have to do better because often, even if we have, let's say, good work, even if we have good intention, if we cannot convince others, then it might not really work in practice, right? And it appears everywhere. So when I teach, of course, I need to give some sort of presentations, right? When we interview, we have to present ourselves. And of course, you go to conferences, you need to present. Or even you are pitching a simple idea to your friend, you need to present it, right? So in many cases, these presentations come often without us realizing, right? So we need to be very clear, very precise what we are presenting. So now I convinced this is important, right? So you're probably convinced before too. But I will start with how my first presentation was. Then I will hear from you. So so when I was in undergraduate college, it was back in India. I didn't have to present too much because it was mostly exam based. So my first presentation was when I went for master's degree, right? And what did I do? Of course, I copy pasted text. I guess from where? From Wikipedia, right? That's our friend, still now. So copy pasted text, and then of course tried to memorize probably everything in the talk. And then when I was presenting and somebody asked a question because they broke my flow, right? I just froze, right? And I had no shame in it because I think that's where you should start, right? If somebody should start from somewhere. And then, of course, like I had really low confidence. Why? Because this thought process comes into your mind first, right? Oh, what others people will think about me as a presenter. And that kind of makes you more sort of afraid of presenting it well, right? So this was my first presentation. So in this talk, how I sort of reformatted is I'm going to discuss some points, and then I'm going to discuss how my experience was on those points, and then we'll talk about some solutions. Yeah, if you probably want to share any of your first time presentation story, you can probably go ahead. Do you have anything to share? So anything you I mean, now it feels funny to me that I did that. No one? No volunteer? Okay, then I'll share one other story of mine. So I was in a group discussion, and that was my first group discussion. And even if like people from India, they know English very well, they're very shy to kind of speak in English. One reason is because it's sort of culturally very cool to speak in English, and that's why they get afraid, right? Oh, whether they will speak sort of appropriately or not. But then, like I was in this discussion and I couldn't speak a single sentence. So whenever I think about that, I wonder like what sort of blocked me from doing that. But then I came up with some mechanisms how to sort of get rid of this kind of, let's say, situations, right? So first is like flexibility matters more than perfection. So what is flexibility in this particular case? So when I was coming here to give this presentation, I had no idea like what kind of things I should talk about, who will be my audience. So I tried to talk with my friend to get some sense who will be my audience, but I didn't really have any idea. So what I thought is, of course, she suggested me as well that, oh, maybe you can talk about your own experience. So that means it might not be optimal, right? The talk might not be optimal, but I have the flexibility to talk about it, right? So, and that sort of starts you somewhere, you know. Second is, of course, you need to practice, you need to see what your talk is about, but memorization doesn't really help. So generally now I kind of remember the core points, what I'm going to talk about, and I keep running those in my head. And then the third point is the most vital point, right? How did I sort of overcome this fear of public speaking? So then I tried to watch, let's say, read some books, try to watch some videos, like how to kind of get rid of this fear. And many of us have that, right? Who are not really performer, right, on stage. Many of us have that. So how to get rid of it? The thing which worked for me is to think about, like, how do I, what will happen, right, if I do any mistakes? If you really think carefully, nothing will happen, right? The world is not going to end if you do some mistakes in a public speaking like stage. Like, for example, let's say if I make a sound of cat or dog or wolf, it will not matter, right? You'll probably not even remember it after like 3 days. So it doesn't, like, the world is not going to end. And when the thought, this particular thought came into my mind, then I thought, oh, it's not really about me. It's mostly about the audience, what the audience wants to hear or wants to learn from this particular talk, right? And this sort of change in the mindset helped me a lot, like give sort of public speeches. And mostly it's about learning together, right? So that fear is gone now, just because I have this mindset that we can learn everything together. Now, knowing our audience, right? So that's very important. And then it depends on what kind of talk you're giving in what setting. So I'll give you some examples. So the most often it happens that I'm giving a talk as a research seminar. So I came up with a research paper, I'm talking about it, right? Or I'm talking in a class, so I'm teaching something. But they're actually very different, because in the research seminar I have a structure. I know what the research is, so I'm talking about it. In the class, you have a much longer time period, right? So that means you get to explain things in much more details. And you are trying to talk about established techniques, right? So the students might not even have the background. So you need to sort of keep in mind that those backgrounds are helpful to describe, or you have to describe from scratch. Whereas if you go to research seminar, you always expect that people are already experts, and you did something new and you're trying to convince them that this is new and this will be helpful, right? So the summary is, you need to really know who is your audience and how can you sort of tune your talk towards the audience. So again, it's not about just about the speaker, right? It's mostly about the audience. So, like, let's say knowing our audience. So one tip which I got is, generally you should avoid jargons if it is not needed, right? So let's say I don't need to say AI in this talk, right? So let's say if someone is not familiar with AI, let's say for example my grandma, if she's sitting here, she won't understand. So I don't need to say AI. So you can always clarify terms, but you have to think about these terms from their context, right? So I'll give you an example. So the example is reinforcement learning. So I took this exercise on me, that I'm going to explain reinforcement learning to you, knowing that you have no background, let's say in CS, right? You might have, some of you might have, but I'm assuming you don't have any background in CS, you don't have any background in machine learning. So this particular topic is very popular because of many reasons. One of the major reasons is the Nobel Prize in computer science was given in this particular field this year, right? So that's why I think this is sort of became very important, and it's also a very important technique. So it's called reinforcement learning. It's a type of machine learning. So let me try to explain it. Okay. So some of you might have dogs, right? So what do you do with dogs? So basically, you sort of, let's say, you throw a stick, and the dogs go, and then bring back the stick. Sometimes you kind of give them a treat, right? So what you're doing, you are sort of kind of giving some rewards because the dog took some action, right? And now you can think of this as a reinforcement learner agent, right? So let's say you hear about this AI agent and all those. Now the dog becomes the AI agent, and the AI agent is kind of interacting with some sort of environment which is you in this particular case, right? And the agent is getting reward when they behave properly, the agent is getting penalty when they don't behave properly, and that's how you teach the agent. And this process is reinforcement learning. I hope I did an okay-ish job, right, to explain what reinforcement learning is. Okay, so the main point is that you have to know your audience. If you know the audience well, you know how to tune your talk, right? So that's the main message. Now, generally from my experience, if you give like different kind of talks, you kind of come up with different strategies, right? So let's say I'm giving a take-heavy talk, right, where you have lots of methods and lots of data, you have to analyze them, you have some algorithms. How can I explain them, right? I kind of go with more visuals, right? How to, let's say, I'm explaining the method, but they really need to understand how the method works in a sort of in an abstract way. So I go there, I try to make some visuals so that they get the gist of it, right? Even if they don't get to know every detail, single details. When I'm trying to give public talks, like which are more generic, then I'm trying to use, let's say, stories or analogies which are everybody is familiar with, right? Like for example, let's say cooking, music, or some habit like which is everyday come into our picture, right? Driving, for example. When we're giving, let's say, at least I'm teaching in the class for the students, I generally do a frequent check, like whether they are understanding these things or not, right? But of course, you cannot probably ask the direct question, oh, did you understand? Nobody's going to say no, right? Because of course they're shy. So you have to say like, hey, maybe let's play a game, right? And then in the game, you put some questions which were in the content so far, right? And then that's how you sort of judge whether they're understanding or not. Or you can ask, like give them a kind of short demo or kind of give them something to interact with, right? Then you will understand. So these are my experience with like knowing your audience. Then the next question comes, how do you sort of make the presentation better, right? So far we talked about two things, right? One thing is like what my first experience was with talks, and second thing is knowing our audience, right? Which is the most important part. So this is also one of the main aspects, that how do we do presentation flow. If you see these pictures on the side, they just for like for some laughs, right? So we should not make the flow like that. We should make the flow very simple so that everybody can understand the flow of the talk. So they'll say this rule of 3 is actually easy to follow. You will have some sort of intro. Like in this particular talk, I gave you an intro with a motivation, with the story, and then I gave you the intro why you should present well, right? So these are the two elements in the intro. Then in the body, so far I have covered knowing our audience, then I am covering how to make the presentation flow better, right? And then some more content will come. And then you conclude with some final thoughts, right? Because that's how you wrap up the talk and say, okay, these are the, even if you don't remember all the details, maybe these are the things you can take with you and then maybe improve your next talk. Okay, so, and then, but it really changes depending on where you are giving the talk. Like for example, teaching is different. When I go to teach in a class, you have to be absolutely clear what you're going to teach, and you have to set their expectations, like for the students. So say like, okay, I am going to cover X, Y, Z topic, and then after the class, you are going to have, or you're going to learn A, B, C things, right? So once you set the expectations, then it's very easy to kind of structure the teaching. Same with talks. Sometimes like we talk about a research problem, we say, okay, after this talk, you are going to take these 3 things with you, right? And then in the entire talk, I try to motivate that these 3 things are present in the talk. Okay? So that's how sort of you strategize your talks. And then, of course, in the end, you have to have your key message. So in this talk, you will also see that you will have a key message, what you can take with you. And then, so this is about flow, right? What about narratives? What kind of stories you should tell, like in the talk itself? So,
in research it's sort of easy because you always start with a problem and then you say what kind of method you have applied for your problem, what kind of result you have got, and then if those results have some practical implications in real life or not, right? So it has a very clear structure. So when I was making this talk, I was thinking what the flow should be, right, in this particular talk. So then, of course, by debating many times, I sort of like tried to kind of come up with some sort of structure, and I will reveal that structure to you after the entire talk. And then sometimes in the narratives, you have to build some sort of tension, right? So what does it mean? It means like when you are giving some sort of, let's say, talks about, let's say, something, you have to surprise people, right? Otherwise, it sort of like becomes monotonous in the talk itself. Surprise means like, how can you build tension? Of course, it's an extreme term, but you can build tension by asking questions, for example. So what I do, let's say if I go to, let's say, give a just talk, I generally do this, right? So let's say I have a problem, and then I ask question about the problem so that I can organize the audience thoughts. Like for example, I talk about a problem and say something like this: oh, is the problem needed? Oh, is the problem that you face every day? Does this problem have a solution? So you can actually kind of initiate some sort of thought process in your audience mind easily by asking some questions in the slides itself, right? So that's how sort of you build tension. And once you kind of build that sort of hype in their mind, and then in the next slide you can say, oh, look, we asked about this question in previously, now I am giving you an answer. Once you give the answer, you can again ask, oh, is it a perfect answer? So is it the method which is going to work for that question? If not, what is the problem? If yes, is the solution achievable, right? So you can ask several questions and then kind of try to organize your audience thoughts. So I mean that's what I do in general. But usually, let's say if you are going to give a product pitch, right? If you're going to give a sales pitch to your manager, or if you're going to give a sales pitch to a customer, you can always kind of build this kind of tension, right, in the slides, and it's even easier because you can say, oh, you are looking for this particular product, but have you thought about this particular feature? Then you go to the next slide and say, look, our method actually gives you this particular feature, but does it have the similar cost, right? So you can kind of build some sort of like tensions and the resolution in the top, so that the narrative becomes better and it becomes easier for the audience to understand, right? So so what we learned so far, we talked about mostly the project narratives. We talked about how to kind of design a presentation flow, and we talked about the first thing, right, knowing your audience. So these three things. Now I'm going to move on to the next thing, which is slide design, and this will be fun, believe me, right? Because slide design is something which is very personal, right? Because we all have different aesthetic sense, right? So what you think is a good slide, I might not think it's a good slide, right? But in the end, it's not really about aesthetics. It's mostly about how can you deliver what you wanted to say, right, in the first place, more effectively, right? So even if the aesthetics is bad, if that purpose gets fulfilled, then you are good, right? Okay, so these are the general sort of advice, like how should we design our slides. So one is always talk about one single idea per slides, because we are humans, right? We cannot take bunch of ideas together in 30 seconds, right? So for example, this slide is talking about how to design slides, right? Just one idea, okay? And for aesthetics, you have to always use large fonts. You can always use visuals, right, to make this more understandable. Like I was saying, when I talk about algorithms, I talk about other things, methods, I generally use visuals. You have to do proper spacing. And then if you want to highlight something, and it should come into your talk as well, right? If you want to highlight something, you have to stress on those words, right? So I don't know, have you seen Barack Obama speaking? Of course, probably all of us have seen, right, at some point. So if you see his talks, right, he even pauses in the perfect time, right, and then he will say like, okay, let's make America better. So you will see like his pauses, his strays of words are sort of perfect, right, and they need to be, right. They need to convince the entire country. Luckily I don't need to. I just need to speak to a few people. So they need to do this better job, right, in pausing, in giving stress. So if you do it, like, it's not about presentation. I think when you are speaking with someone, if you try to kind of, let's say, like if we are all trying to become a better communicator, right? So in communication, it's always important to give stress on the right words, right? So just speak a sentence and then you will see like, okay, this particular word is sort of important in this particular sentence. So you probably want to give a pause, or you want to give pause before the word, after the word, or try to say that particular word loudly so that people sort of know. And most of you know about all these things. I'm just trying to organize this in a way so that we have a session about how to speak. Okay, so now I will show you how could slides go wrong, right? Yes.
Quick question. That third item where you say highlight key terms with color or bold. What is the limit of how many colors should you have on one slide to where it's not too busy or too distracting? Is there like 2 colors should be the most you should use on one slide?
Yeah. So so the question is that how many colors you should use in a slide, right? It really depends. But my choice is max 2 to 3, because I feel that if you use more than 3 colors, all the colors should have some meaning to to it, right? So you're not really using the colors for nothing, right? If you used to have the colors, think about the cost you're paying. So it has to have a particular meaning. So 2 is good because, or 3 even is okay, because so when I'm using in this particular slide, I'm using a particular color. That means I want to give importance to that particular word, right? So I don't know if I get this color here, right? So I wanted to say this sentence because I wanted to stress that these are the generic things which people advise and which make sense, but I wanted to kind of emphasize what I generally do for the narrative, right? So I'm kind of using only 2 colors for that. And then, of course, like, just think about when you kind of coming up with colors, they should have some meaning, and then you will use probably less colors. And consistency matters. So if you're using red, are you using the red for the same implications throughout your slides, right? For example, I use red just to put some importance throughout my slides, right? So you can do the same. So now I'm going to show you some bad design of slides, and then I'll also show you how to sort of make it better, right? So first, is it a good slide?
Busy though. Busy.
Is it possible to understand this slide in 1 minute?
No.
No, right? So I should not put this slide. But this is about a method which we developed for our paper for some research, right? But I can really explain this method in a much easier way. Of course, we didn't put this slide, I just put it for fun. So let's see. So now you will understand. Let me explain the method. So we designed a method to find out what are the communities in Facebook. See how long it did take for me to explain to you. It's very easy. Like when they start, we have a graph. So this graph, you can think of your Facebook network, where if you're connected with someone, you have this particular edge between you. And I'm trying to find out groups or communities in that entire network, right? And in the right hand side, that's my result from my algorithm, right? So the green nodes, they are connected together. Of course, the algorithms are not perfect, so they are not giving good results, but you can see some sort of assignment with colors, right? Here I'm using more colors because I want to show that they are in different communities. Okay, so I have this Facebook network. We designed a method. The method should give us communities in the Facebook, right? So it's basically easy to explain. I designed the slide in a much worse way, right? In the previous slide. So now let's see some examples, and it can go really deep if you really think about those designs. So one is, of course, I'm not testing your vision, right? I'm just asking maybe which one will you prefer, right? Which fonts will you prefer if someone is presenting? So are you okay with this font?
No.
The top, right?
Top, yes.
So if we as an audience prefer the top ones, then we should use top ones, right? In all our slides. So one mistake what people generally do, they try to put a lot of text in a particular slide. Once you put a lot of text, you are losing the capability of having the bigger font. So use less and less text in the slides. So then you can have this nice font, right? And all of the slides have that particular font or bigger, okay, in the slides. Okay, now we take many things for granted. So I will talk about some of those things, right? And again, it can go really deep. How can you organize your slides? How can you make the slides more effective? So we'll see like few examples. So one example is color guidelines, right? What colors should we choose? So how many of you have thought about colors when you were thinking, when you were making slides? Okay, so 1, 2, 3. Okay, so some of us think about the colors we're using. Can you read the number which is on the right hand side?
74.
74? 74, you cannot read. Anyone else? 74? Yes. Yes, so basically we take things for granted. So when I show this to my student, and this I sort of teach about visualization in one of the classes where I teach data science, and there let's say there will be at least 10 to 20% students who say they cannot see 74 here.
71. 24.
See 74, but it's very hard to see.
71.
You are seeing 71.
It's
Interesting, right?
74, but my eye feel like not comfortable to see that.
Yes.
So because of the angle, then you know, to see different numbers.
Oh, I see. Yes. So that means that yes, the no number, right? Yeah. No number. I think 10 to 20% students they also say no numbers.
I'm partially colorblind.
So because the reason is the following. The reason is 7 to 10% of male populations are usually colorblind
I
with
thought it's 5.
green and color.
I thought it's 5 now, it's up to 10. Oh, yeah.
You check the angle.
Better now.
Yeah. So that means like okay, angle matters. So that means that many colors we just take as granted. We should not use in our slides. So for example, yellow color blindness is less, but let's say what happened once we are presenting in some conference and somebody asked, hey, I don't understand how you got better results than this particular algorithm. Because because they couldn't see. So I was using yellow, like deeper yellow and less deep yellow to show how good the results are, and they cannot distinguish between these two. So they were asking questions about that. So that means we sort of take this as a granted, right? Like oh, the colors might be everybody can understand colors. So all of us can see the lower plot, right? So the lower plot has blue, green, and red. All of us can see, right?
Yes.
Yes. So that means like basically you have to use some colors which are more like convincing to people, right? So that we don't waste time during the presentation. Okay. There are more to it. So let me show you one more example. So which image do you prefer? The left hand side or the right hand side?
Right.
Left?
Right.
Yeah, right. So of course, like it's kind of obvious, right? Because
Color.
yes, because like it's very bright, and there is one more point with bright colors that once you see something bright on the screen, it has some effect, and the effect really stays after you see that. And am I kind of saying in number? No, but it's produced an after image effect, like when you see something bright. So never use a bright color in the slides. We have other opportunities, right, to wear bright colors, for example running in the night, so you can use bright colors at that. Then there is more to it. So let me show you one more. So these are tier 2 areas, right? Can you see 2 areas? So one is with deeper color, one is with lighter color.
Yes.
Which area is bigger?
Who's bigger?
Bottom one bigger.
Bottom one is bigger. Anyone else? Like
Oh, the outside.
Outside.
so, yeah, the outside is bigger, but between these two,
Bottom one.
Bottom one is bigger. Anyone is for
They're
up
the
one?
same side. They're the same side.
It's the same size. Anyone else?
We are so different.
Bottom one bigger. Anyone else? So we have 2:1. We have two bottom ones, one and one neutral. Anyone else?
They're the same side.
The same size.
Same size? Okay, 2:1. We have 2:1. Anyone else? Okay. So basically they are same size. The same size. So now the point is why I am showing you this? Because of this, right? Because that areas should sort of rendered with colors of similar luminance, right? Similar brightness. Because once you get lighter color, if your background is light, it might seem you have larger area. So now think about this. Now let's say you were kind of, let's say, showing some plots to some manager that how much sales you have year to year, right? And for the sales, maybe you are showing with a lighter color for the next year where the sales are same, right? So your manager might kind of promote you, right? Just because of you didn't have this thing.
That's a good trick.
Okay? Yeah, so that means like there might be many sort of cases where we need to care about the small details, but we don't really like think carefully when we make our slides, right? So okay, so far what we did, right? What we were talking about flow, we were talking about narratives, we were talking about slide design, we talked about audience, right? So I keep repeating because so that we remember how our talk is going. The next is of course what to avoid, right? And there can be lots of examples. So first is paragraphs of text. Like you cannot have lots of text in the slide because even to read this, if I stop and ask you to read this slide, how long does it take? It takes some time, right? It takes at least 15-20 seconds, right, to read like what is in there. So now you have to pay attention to the slide. You have to pay attention what I am saying, right? You have to understand what is going on between what I am speaking and what is in the slide, right? So these three things together, maybe in 30 seconds to 1 minute. It's hard, right? So that means we have to put less content in one particular slide and then try to make people more comfortable to understand. So it's not about, like again, it's not about me delivering some information, right? It's mostly about us gaining some things from this particular talk. So that's the goal. So that means even if you put less content, we are fine. The goal is to make everyone understand and get something out of it. Okay, so more examples. These more examples come from, of course, like we talked about paragraphs, text, tiny font, animation or transition, they are very distracting. And these examples should come from you. What did you hate most when you see someone speaking and the first thing comes into your mind that we will not do this, right? And if you make the list of that, whenever you go for a talk, you will see this will be a pretty big list. And then when you make the talk for ourselves next time, maybe we can follow this list as a guidance, right? What we should not do. Okay? So, can you give some examples? Like, you went to a talk, you didn't really like it. So that I can also learn, right? I will also put in my list box.
For you, the data, to the data heavy test, your data visualization and you use the methodology. So, like somehow you talk to the people, they don't have. They're difficult to explain to the people. They understand your methodology because relate to the laws, everything. So my question is how you can get people understand, because you just put there, no book can understand it because absolutely your language, they're not language. How you communicate with them so can get to in your expertise area.
I see. Yeah, so the question is, if I understand correctly, you can correct me if I'm wrong. The question is, let's say, if you have a scenario where you need to explain a lot of data, a lot of methods in a short time, right? To an audience who might not have the background. Right? That's the question. So my strategy is what the audience needs from me, right? So the audience needs to understand the data in a very high level. I won't even show the details of the data. So what I will do is, for example, right? So they might not even remember whether it went from 5% to 10%, right? They will remember it was a 200% jump. So I already reduced two numbers to one number, right? So you have to kind of come up with some strategies where it's easy to comprehend, right? So easy to understand. But it's a hard question to answer because it really depends on the context, right? How do you want to simplify? For example, when you are giving a talk to the students, right? Where they came here to learn something, then you need to go through the details. So what I do is I reduce my content by a lot, and then I try to kind of go through the content what I have, the reduced content what I have in much more details, so that if they get a similar content, they can understand by themselves, right? So for example, instead of explaining two different algorithms, I take only one algorithm and explain them much more details so that they can understand the algorithm. Once they understand the first one, maybe they can go to the second one and understand it by themselves, right? So, but the teaching is a little bit different because teaching, I mean, at least my philosophy is more towards how to learn than what they are learning, right? So if they know how to learn, they can take care of the rest, right? But it just needs some example practice. But thank you for the question. Okay, so any questions so far? Yes.
I have more example. One
Yeah.
of the example is like personal, personal reference. I have a medical monitor. He presented a scientific report, and this guy loves cars, so he put his own Porsche 911 on it, and with a whole bunch of medical data and all that stuff. So half of us are guys, we love car too, so we just look at the car and we just continue look at the car, slide after slide. And of course some of our, colleague, female is interested too because it's a beautiful Porsche. So and after, an hour and a half, we get nothing out of it. Even though he's have a very good report on the project, but we so distracted with his personal car.
That's true.
Yep. So
That's true.
That's one of the things.
This example kind of brings us back to many things, right? One is, let's say we are violating the principle of knowing our audience, what the audience wants. Second is, we want to be effective, right? Not be optimally aesthetic, right? So I can put a really pretty slide, right, with a beautiful picture of the lake besides it, right? But they might not really have some meaning what we are going to discuss about.
yeah.
So that principle also comes, but if you really think carefully of whatever seminars you went to, there will be plenty of good things, there will be plenty of bad things, right? Even I go back and I try to think about my own talk and think about what the things I should not have done in the first place in the talk, right? And there will be a list, and I try to kind of cover those lists when I go to the next talk to give, right? Okay, so these examples will be sort of easy for you to construct. So first half is done. So what did we learn in the first half? In the first half we learned 4 things, right? The first thing was to knowing your audience. Second thing was how to structure your presentation. Third thing was how to bring a good narrative to your presentation. And fourth thing was how to design slides, right? So I will take any question at this point because this first half is done. So then we will go to second half. Any question? Or any comments? Or any discussion I missed? Yes.
Sometimes, when you have somebody present, even though they have a slide and they have a short, but sometimes too many. You can continue to keep looking on, you explain it's too much. It's overdone.
Yes, I was telling this story for a particular slide. So I will tell you one more story about it. And I will come back to this particular slide and say, hey, I told you the story. So the story is about this particular teacher from MIT. His name is Patrick Winston. Unfortunately, he passed away 2 years ago. But he was one of my favorite teachers because back in the days when internet was not so popular, some of his lectures were open in YouTube. So we used to learn some computer science things from his lectures. and his name is Patrick Winston. You should, I mean, I have a reference for his talk. He has a talk about how to talk, how to speak. That's the title of the talk. So it's on YouTube, and you should definitely see it. You can forget about my talk, but you should definitely see that talk. Okay? He is an excellent teacher. So the story was the following. He was at an airport, and he's already famous. People know him because he's a very good teacher. So he's at an airport, and he's sitting because his flight got delayed or something. And somebody came up to him. He's like, "Hey, you are Dr. Patrick Winston, right?" He said, "Yes." It's like, "Oh, can you look at my slides?" Because I watched your talk, like in the internet, like I watched your talk, how to speak. So, can you look at my slides? Then he said, it has too much text. Then the guy said, "You didn't even look at my slides." He said, "I already know, you have too much text." So that's the common mistake in like all the talks, because I think every one of us has a tendency to put a lot of content somehow in a particular talk, right? So now I'll let you guess. My talk was 1 hour 30 minutes. Supposed to be 1 hour 30 minutes. Hopefully I'm not delaying you for dinner. But guess how many slides I have made? So 1 hour 30 minutes, right? That means 90 minutes. What would be your guess? Like by looking at many talks.
At least 40.
It's 40. Anyone else? I mean, high range, low range.
1 hour and a half is 20.
I think you have about less more than 4.
40?
Less more than 4. Total about like 25 or 26.
Anyone else?
25.
Right now you are 22, right?
Yeah.
I go for 30.
Yeah.
40, I go for 30.
No, I said 25.
Okay.
So the general tendency of people like to make slides by minutes. So if they have like 1 hour talk, they'll make almost 50 to 60 slides. So in this particular talk, I have 30 slides.
Yeah.
How many?
30. 30 slides.
30.
30, 50, what, 30?
How many you got?
30 slides.
See, I win.
But without the title and the thank you slide. Yeah, so that means like you need to make lesser and lesser slides like when you go for a talk. So now we'll go to the next phase, right? And it will be quicker than the first one. So we'll talk about delivery techniques, we'll talk about engagement, we'll talk about how to handle questions, and we'll talk about what people do as common mistakes. And this is one of them, right? We can talk about a lot. Okay, so delivery techniques, right? So again, these pictures are just for fun. So these are the general kind of, again, advice which I often get from people. Like, okay, vary your tone, right? And it actually works. So what happens is, like in the class, sometimes I see people are kind of, getting, the entire class is getting low energy, and I suddenly start speaking in much more higher voice, and then it works sometimes. Like they sometimes wake up from nowhere, they might think, oh, this is very important, so we should listen to it. Maybe this will be in the quiz. And sometimes also I trick them, oh, this might be in the quiz, then they get up again. Right? Then, of course, use pauses. And if you want to really learn how to give a pause, you should watch like Barack Obama's speeches. I really love them. And then maintain open postures and natural movement. This is something which is very personal, right? Because you will often see people have different style of giving talks. Let's say somebody will take, let's say microphone and try to do this when they're giving talks. Some people will kind of put their hands in the pocket. But what I like as an audience, if people sort of make some, will show some openness, right? So let's say if I start giving the talk with the folded hand, you'll always feel like probably you are not really there will be a welcoming vibe, right, with this particular posture. So I try not to kind of put my hands in the pocket or something like that, because I like the speakers in that way. But it's kind of very personal. And then you have to make some jokes, right? But jokes is tricky because sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, right? Because it depends on what kind of training we have in the past. But like, let's say my own struggle was I used to make some jokes in the class and they all laugh, and then I will have this reinforcement learning, right? Then I'll make another joke and then I'll say, oh, they are laughing. So then I tune my jokes in the way towards my reward, right? What I was saying other slide. So yeah, so make jokes, try to engage. But there will be there will be some sort of techniques, right? How can you improve your talk so that this particular things get improved, right? One thing is like speaking with presence. People say, oh, you can record and watch yourself. That might help. But this is the general advice, what people try to give. Second is, oh, maybe you can sort of practice those transitions, right? So if you remember, I was talking about asking a question in the slide and then giving the answer in the next slide, right? So then basically you are kind of maintaining the coherence. So these small tricks actually help a lot. And then people say, oh, practice in front of a colleague or a mirror, right? Again, these things really work, so let's say in more personal basis. So my personal experience was, we have to be always ready to be present, right? So let's say if someone asks me, oh, what is your research in 1 minute? If someone asks me, what is your research for 3 minutes? Once someone asks me, what is your research like for 5 minutes? I have to be always ready to kind of tell that, right? Because we often meet people, I don't know, like in the corridor, right? And you talk with them for 5 minutes. So you want to make a connection about your research, right? And I am pretty sure it comes often in some other context for you. So how to, like, you have to be always ready to present. It's not always you have a mic and you have a presentation board and you are presenting. This mindset actually helped me a lot, if I am always ready in some sense. Second, practice a lot, but with a friend. What does it mean? That means you know that the audience, like the friend who is sitting in the audience is giving you genuine feedback. And you are more prone to take that feedback because it's your friend, right? So you know there's a genuine intention of making you better and you get that feedback from that friend. Sometimes if you bring someone else in the audience, they will give you feedback, but that might not be the best feedback what you can get.
I lost a lot of friends about this. Practice with them and I don't like them anymore, so I lost them. This is the way to lose a friend.
I'm sorry, so don't take this advice then. And you can always add meta comments to sort of excite the audience, right? So let's say, for example, when I describe my research, sometimes I add this kind of comments. Oh, this is the part which is my favorite. So once they hear, oh, this is his favorite, let me hear, like what is going on. Or you can say, this was the part which I struggled the most, right? So once they hear this kind of meta comments, then they get more interested. Of course, they have to be genuine, right? So if you said like, oh, this I have almost struggled, but then you show something very simple, then they might think you're stupid, right? So it has to be really well timed and genuine in some sense. If you do that, I think then it's very easy to engage your audience. Speak more in the coherent manner. Then the next thing comes how to engage the audience, right? And there are many things which people sort of come up with. So is the figure hazy, the right hand side, or is it okay? Yeah, okay. It's okay. You guys have been kind. I think it's hazy, and you should not put this kind of figure like if it's hazy. But anyway, so I was just putting these memes for fun. So how to engage, right? So maybe you can always ask a question, right, and pose challenges. You guys are very engaging. So it's already nice to see the engagement. But you can always kind of, let's say if you are seeing some audience is not being engaged, you can do always some activities, right? You can kind of use some sort of humor. You can bring up some case studies. Generally, case studies really help because they want to see what happened in real life, what went wrong, what went right, and how it's relevant to the talk, right? And then, of course, stories, analogies are always welcome because they make the talks more interesting. The problem is re-engaging attention, right? And this is not valid for talks which are short talks, let's say 5 minutes, 3 minutes, because we have that span, right? You don't have to re-engage the audience in 3 minutes or 5 minutes talk. But if the talk is for 1 hour, like this kind of talk, right? Then every 7-10 minutes, you have to kind of say, hey, we're going to introduce something new, so that it doesn't become monotonous, right? So in this particular talk, I am constantly reminding you what we're learning from this talk, right? So that you know, okay, we learned about A, then we learned about B, we learned about C. Yes.
Can I interrupt with a question?
Yeah, of course, of course.
Okay, well, what would you suggest us to do? Because you say engage the audience. So we come up with a question. We ask the audience, and we got into one of the audience who like give you like 15-minute answer. how when you present up there, you say, honestly, you don't have time for that. You expect somebody is like, nice enough, manner enough to give you a short. No, that person is a drama out, and then you run. You need to control your time. What would your suggestion to us to gain back our control on it? We cannot be rude and say, I'm gonna, how do you suggest us to be nicely to stop that? Because we the one who, my fault. I asked him, and he loved to talk, and he took over my presentation. What would you suggest us to do?
This is a very, very good point. If let's say it needs some sort of mindfulness, right, to be in the audience asking questions. So if you find someone like in that region, what my technique generally is I try to ask a question to clarify right away. Like when I see, okay, this answer might be too long. So when they cannot clarify, then I say, okay, maybe we can take it offline so that we can have a much detailed discussion about that. But I ask a question back so that they sort of again need to pause a little bit and think about that question. Right? So that's my technique. But hopefully I didn't. I won't meet this kind of audience too often, and I didn't really meet. Fortunately, I didn't meet too many of them. So so basically, like this is the generic sort of advice. In the class, it becomes easier because you can always use some sort of polls. You can use, okay, how many of you in the favor of A, or how many of you in the favor of B, like I was doing for the squared part, right, for the area 1. So you can have different mechanisms for re-engaging them. But next we'll move into the topic which is also very interesting and aligns with what you were suggesting. This is handling question and answer, right? So we got one question which is a different kind of question, right? But here mostly, let's say when you get a question from the audience and we are giving a talk. At least my problem was when I was giving the talks during my grad school days or something. I always used to think that question is to question me, right? And this sort of this thought process of, let's say, me-centric thought process actually is harmful because the question is just to get an answer, right? So then I try to remove that me part from the question. Okay, this is just a question out of curiosity. And as a speaker, I am responsible to give a good answer, right? Then how can you give a good answer? So first is when someone asks a question, maybe it's a good practice to repeat that question if it is not clear, especially if it is not clear. Second is try to pause a little bit, try to think about what the question is, and this is more relevant when the question is more technical, right? Let's say more about data, more about method. Then you need to pause a little bit and try to think, okay, this is the question, I need to give an answer. And this increases empathy of the audience too, right? Because they are thinking that, this person is actually taking the time to answer my question. So they are caring about the question. So don't rush too much, just be patient. That will be my sort of suggestion. And that's what it helped me, being patient. And then be thoughtful about answering them. But what happens? Sometimes you don't know the answer, right? So what do we do? So then, basically, we have to be very honest about that. You have to say like, hey, this is a great question, but I don't have the answer right now, and I will think about it, right? So give them some sort of way to work on it. And then maybe tell some mechanisms how you're going to sort of solve this. So maybe it's about, let's say, our data you didn't explore in your research, right? So maybe you can say, our next step is to explore this particular data because this data has this nature. Maybe that might help us. So at least you show a good intent that you're going to work on that particular question. And second is, of course, you can always follow up with them once, if it's applicable to the audience. Sometimes the audience you don't get them, right? You can meet them. So it's very hard to follow up. But if it is possible, then always follow up. Why is that? Because they will remember you for that, right? They will remember, oh, I asked a question and this person cared so much that they even followed up with us, right? After that. And it's very helpful in long term. Okay, so so far what do we learn? We learned about question answering, right? We learned about how to give, how to be like re-engage, how to engage the audience. And then next, I will show you what are the common sort of pitfalls, what people generally do. Common pitfalls, of course, directly reading from slides. So if I just turn around and try to directly read from slides, that will be the one. Nowadays I see a mistake similar to that. What people do is people prepare notes, maybe from ChatGPT or some other AI assistant, and the notes will appear in their computer, and they read from the notes, which is the first no to any presentation. Because once you are trying to hear me out, you are hearing how I am making a conversation with you, right? If I had to read the notes, they could just leave the notes with the audience, right, and go somewhere else. So that's a first no. You should not do that with the notes. Overstuffing your slides with your content. So that's your question. See, that's the common mistakes, and that's what Patrick Winston also was saying. Second is like ending abruptly. So then, for example, if I just leave now, right? So there will be, I mean, after this slide, if I just leave now, there will be no closure, right? Like, okay, I just wrap it up, right? It's not really a kind of like good thing to kind of leave like abruptly, right? Like it's like a series. When you see the series, you always want to make closure, something like that. And then again, we go back to the same question: what do we dislike? So if you think about what do we dislike, and it's happening again and again in many talks, you should note them down, and you should not do it, at least in your talk, right? So that's the kind of goal, and that's your representation in slides. And then some mechanisms how to sort of avoid it, right? So we have to act on it. Like for example, the slides should be cues, right? Like, okay, there are some points, I need to talk about these points, and let's make a conversation about this point. So my goal, my ultimate goal is to make all the talks like I'm having a conversation with my friend, right? So this is a conversation, let's get into these things, and I'm supposed to talk about this, but let's make it interactive so that you know better, you get the most out of it. And then if you don't leave any time for the talk, you just speak, and you have 2 minutes to asking questions. That's sort of a bad sign. And you have to get a closure, right? That's the main thing. And I was going to tell the same story about Patrick Winston in this slide, but you already asked the question. So that was the story in this slide. And then we are kind of like, whatever I wanted to talk about presentation, I am sort of done. So I will let me wrap up with some final thoughts, what I think it's actually good to have in a presentation, right? But these are more philosophical than actual technical. So one is, I prefer clarity, like over complexity. I don't need to show, let's say, 100 complex things, right? My objective always is that whatever I'm going to show them, they should be able to get 100% out of it. So that's the goal. Of course, the goal, I mean, I cannot achieve this goal because we're just all improving, but that's my ultimate goal. Okay. Second is about connection, then performance. I mean, fortunately or unfortunately, I'm not a political leader, so you don't need to perform, right? I just need to connect with you and share with you what I learned so far through my experiences, and then of course through your questions and through your answers, I get to know something more, right? And then I take those things into my bag. The next time I present, I will use those techniques, I will use those knowledge for making my talk better. And third thing is make the audience scared, not just understand. Like why we should care about this talk, right? That's sort of the ultimate message. So this is the advice I got from someone, and I kept this with me. So the advice is that the audience will remember you, how you make them feel, right? So for example, probably you won't remember any of the specifics after 7 days, right, about this talk. but you would remember how you felt when you were in the audience about this particular talk. Right? And it happened so many times. People connected with me after some conference, even after 5 months. Oh, I was in your talk. They don't remember my talk, but I was in your talk. It was a great talk. Right? And then they talk with me about some other problems. So I got many collaborators just by giving a good talk in a conference. And then, so it matters to connect with people who are in the audience. Okay, so I, like before ending the talk, this will be, let's say, my sort of philosophical message for this particular talk. And if you don't remember any of the details previously, just if you remember this one, already this talk is successful. Okay. So let me acknowledge all of them. So especially the audience, like for improving my talk, like in each and every talk, teachers, students, friends, co-workers. The resources I was talking about, so you should, even if you forget about this talk, I won't mind, but you should really go and watch this YouTube video, how to speak. It has millions of views and it's very old video, so people still watch it. And there are books also, how to become better at presentation. But my tip is a little different. So I would say, like when you were a kid, right? We try to get good qualities from each of our elders, right? So let's say I have this uncle who is very, who is kind of social worker, right? Who always sees people and tries to help them. So let's learn this nature from him. Then now let's say we of course we make our role models our dad. So whatever good things they do, they are kind of hero, right? So we take all these good things from them. Then we see someone else doing something really good, our teachers, then we take some good things from them. So it's same, right? So go to each and every seminar, try to get some of those good things from the seminar, and then also make this pile of good things bigger and bigger, right? So you have to do things and you have don't do things, right? So then both the piles are there and you can follow the piles when you are making your own talk. So that will be my sort of tip from this. And thank you so much. You could have gone to that seminar, this seminar.